Well, hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, I suppose good night just before you go to bed, wherever you are in our lovely world. Thanks so much for joining us here for live on Serverless Office Hours. We are on the AWS Twitch channel, also on YouTube Serverless Land, and also via LinkedIn Live. Eric, actually, I forgot, before we were streaming, I just thought, what are you doing this weekend? For the weekend, should we just go to Vegas? I know it's American, it's Thanksgiving, you may be busy, but should we just go to Vegas? In fact, all of you, should we just go to Vegas this weekend?
I'm already here, Julian. As you can see, Serverless Espresso is actually happening in 2 places, and so I'm setting up. Yeah, I had to come early. I've been here since May, really.
Wow, are there that many servers to rack and stack? It takes a while.
Yeah. So for the serverless demo, yeah, that's how we're handling it.
Cool. Well, everybody who's joining us on the stream, we have a fun stream today. We've got the great and the good and the even better, and then lowly old me. And we're just going to talk about all things reInvent, pre-invent and reInvent. And we've got some super brains on the stream over here. I'll get people to introduce themselves as they come on as well. But yeah, there's a lot to get through. I think this year has been one of the busiest pre-invent seasons in terms of announcements. We're going to get into all of those kind of things. So yeah, please, remember, we are live here. So please send us your questions, your comments. Tell us where you're from, if you're going to reInvent, what you're looking forward to. Things that are going on. We only know what we know. So let us know all the good skinny of stuff that's also going on as well. There is a Compute blog post about which is turn your serverless ideas into reality, because reInvent this year is turn your ideas into reality. So yeah, there's a serverless attendees guide, which has got a whole bunch of stuff if you're into reading of that kind of thing. So that's the link over there. I'm sure I had a link which I can paste into the chat, which makes it easier to connect on. There we go. That's going to be in the screen. So this year is also a special reInvent kind of thing because it is 10 years of Lambda and ECS. So there's going to be, a whole bunch of celebration for this year as well. And yeah, 10 years of Lambda and ECS. So super cool. Some of our people have put together this 10th anniversary site, which actually has a whole bunch of stuff. We have got talking to product leadership. We're diving deep with Mark Brooker to understand how Lambda works under the hood. He was one of the original principal engineers. We have serverless moments with a whole bunch of AWS serverless heroes talking about their kind of things. And just, lots of cool things. We did also Serverless Office Hours 2 weeks ago, hearing from some of our internal leaders and some of our external people all about Lambda and ECS for 10 years. So that is super useful to talk about. But releases this year, as I said, there are a bunch. So who wants to talk about Lambda runtimes? I'm going to put anybody on the spot.
I can take the Node one, considering excellent. That is my favorite language.
I thought so. No preferences here, Luca, obviously.
No, absolutely. But Node had a quick turnaround, and now finally we have version 22 straight away from after the release from the Node core team. And it's a fantastic testament of the work that the Lambda team has done in the last few years in order to catch up for having an almost immediate release of the latest version of runtimes. And I think, to be honest, was one of the key things our customers asked several times. And once again, we deliver what we have been asked. I think the runtime teams definitely deserve a medal because they need to handle a lot of complexity. And to be honest, it's not an easy task at all. And in Node, Node 22 brings some interesting features, nothing groundbreaking in my opinion, but there are some interesting things. Like, for instance, under experimental flag, we can use the possibility to require an ES module that wasn't possible before, because ES module can be synchronous or asynchronous. And now if they are synchronous, they can be used and require with the require method. That I think is a big win overall. Also, there is a possibility to use WebSocket under experimental flag. There is a new client library the client library that can be used without any external library directly in Node.js. That is another big thing, in my opinion. And in general, we are constantly moving towards a very interesting future for Node. There is another experimental flag that is pretty cool, that is not only for the 22, but for others, that enables you to load remote ES modules directly into Node. That is a very interesting approach if you think about that, that in the browser is already happening very often, but now it's possible also with Node. So very excited about that, very excited that now we can catch up very quickly on releasing the new version of the runtime. I don't want to steal more time because I know that my colleagues have a bazillion of other ideas to share with you.
Yeah, first of all, I'm going to welcome Adam Wagner. Welcome. Hey, Adam.
Cool. Yeah,
how's it going?
as you say, kudos to the language team.
Yeah. Kudos to the language team. I'll jump in on the Python real quick unless anybody else wants to add to this. But Python 3.13 was released in October, and I mean, just a little over a month later, we released it at Lambda. So very fast release time. If you've been following, and just exactly what Luke is saying, if you've been following them, they've been really speeding up the release times on the run times. Super excited. New Python features they're looking at. You have data model improvements. There are improvements to the Python data model with the static attributes, stores the names attributes across access through self.x. You have typing changes. The standard library includes improvements for the Python finalization error, which is big. There's some new functions like base64.z85 encode and base 64.z85 decode. So obviously I have an encode and decode there, and so lots more. And I won't continue rattling those off, but like I said, kudos to the Lambda runtime team and just how fast they're bringing those out. Adam, you're a Python user. Is there anything else you want to throw out about that?
I think you covered it pretty well, but yeah, I'm really kudos to that team for catching, less than a month, right, from the release. So really rapid cadence, just really great to see.
One thing I'll add on the Python side, one thing that you'll notice for the Python aficionados is that they are as of 3.13, they enabled as an experimental feature a new capability called free-threaded CPython. So again, you may be aware with Python, there's the global interpreter lock, which kind of gives you quasi multi-threading. Well, they're now, as an experimental feature, you can now actually have global interpreter lock disabled, which is, again, it's still early on, it's experimental, but it's going to dramatically change the way that Python does multi-threading, which will then, of course, be relevant for Lambda because, of course, we have multiple vCPUs as you scale up your memory.
Yeah, Higgy, is that... Because I think that's not enabled I don't think that global interpreter lock is enabled in Lambda, and you can't disable it because it's a experimental feature. So obviously, because Lambda runs at a ridiculous scale all over the world, some of the experimental things we can't just turn on for everybody just in case.
So I guess this is more in the 3.13 world where it's beginning to do that. So of course, as we move beyond experimental, this is something we hope to see in the Lambda world.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. Yeah, and then obviously
Sorry, we're talking about Python. We're probably going to both the same place, but Python.net, we now have SnapStart.
SnapStart. So, that is awesome.
So that's huge thing. We originally had that for Java. If you're not familiar with SnapStart, I don't know. Does anybody want to take this? Want to run with this? Okay. So SnapStart allows you to. It actually it invokes it and stores it in memory, and then it uses it from memory. And so we saw this help improve with Java, and it's a really broad and high level explanation. But we saw this improvement with Java, also being able to apply this to Python and .NET as well in the latest releases. So super excited about that. That was a pre-invent release.
Yeah, just some people have been asking, well, why Python and .NET? Why not Node? Because more people probably use Node in the world, and the reason is for .NET is like. Not in the same analogy as Java, but .NET is super efficient once it gets up and running. But .NET does a whole bunch of clever stuff behind the hood. It's sort of on-demand, just-in-time compilation. It's not quite that, but assembly loading and a whole bunch of stuff that once .NET gets up and going, it's super fast. And so basically, what you can do is you can prime that stuff in advance, take a snapshot of your running, in a way, micro VM after the initialization process is done, and then your restore of that is sub-second, maybe half a second. So yeah, you could do a whole bunch of crazy stuff in your init, and that doesn't affect your cold starts going forward. And then Python are like, well, why do you need it for Python? Python's super fast to start up. It is, but if you are loading some big machine learning things, or you need to dynamically bring something in it, or pull something even from S3, or I don't know, run LangChain, run DuckDB, cha-ching. We mentioned GenAI. We all get to keep our jobs. So if you want to do that in Python, Python,
awesome.
you now can. Yeah, you now can, and that's super cool. So yeah, I know people are having great fun with DuckDB, but obviously it takes a bit of time to spin up a database within a Lambda function. Now you spin up your database in a Lambda function, sounds bizarre, and then yeah, create that snapshot and off you go. And so the reason not for Node is, well, Node doesn't quite have those use cases yet, and also Python and .NET also have really robust hooks that, there's some stuff you need to do with snapstart for uniqueness, basically. So, want to do a database reconnection or a random number generation kind of stuff. Python and .NET and Java have good hooks for doing that as well. So, yeah, that was one of the questions I had about .NET, about Node and snapstart. Yeah, maybe coming in the future. Yeah, let us know what you would like to use it, and yeah, the team would be happy to do that. Cool. So the next batch of Lambda things is sort of developer experience things. And that, I know that's a sort of woolly and vague kind of term, but the Lambda team is really putting a whole bunch of effort into developer experience. And some of it is actually just highlighting things that we've done before and making it much easier. But Anton, I'll jump over to you because there's a new console for Lambda. Tell us about that.
I mean, we launched a lot of stuff recently and throughout this year, but I think this is by far the one that gets me excited the most, right? I do use console a lot, right? And you got to keep in mind, right? Serverless is all about innovating fast, right? Prototyping fast, getting to a point where you're productive fast, right? So the first time I saw VS Code editor embedded into the console, it literally changed my day-to-day life, right? Because yes, obviously, as you're building applications and you're pushing those applications to shared environment, you would use some local IDE, you would have CI/CD pipeline, all of that, absolutely, right? But as a solution architect, as someone who does a lot of prototyping, a lot of experiments and POCs, this is priceless, right? I can use the same tool I use and love on my desktop. Now I can actually use it in cloud, and the experience it's exactly the same. I even have extensions, right? I even have log tails. So I probably shed a tear when I saw that one, right? So I was super happy to actually see that same experience I used to, on my desktop, seeing that in the cloud used with Lambda. So if you haven't tried it yet, I highly recommend. It's just amazing. Go full screen, and within 30 minutes, you have no idea you're still in browser.
Yeah. And one thing I mean, we're all talking about the look and feel, and I appreciate that as well. But I think the biggest thing is you can view larger code packages in the console, which is huge. How many times have someone's deployed a function, you just want to quickly go and have a look. Sorry, it's too big. And you're like, you got to find the source code or download it from the console, which is all fine. Now, a Lambda function, can be up to 50 meg, and you can view that whole Lambda function within the console. An individual file can't be more than 3 meg. So previously it was 3 meg for the whole function thing. So you can imagine Node modules or Python dependencies would easily go over 3 meg. So now, as long as your individual file, which generally it's a text file that you're going to be viewing as your function code, as long as that's not over 3 meg, you can view it, and that's also a big win in my in my book. Just one thing, it's not your full Visual Studio code because it's a Visual Studio code for web, so it doesn't have a terminal, because how are you going to terminal into a Lambda function, and it also doesn't have debug console and all those kind of things. But other than that, extensions, it looks great. The other thing I'll quickly pick up, there's a whole new experience with VS Code and the AWS Toolkit within your IDE. So that actually links with a new console experience, because you can actually download whatever you built in the console, because it was great to iterate, and then you're like, infrastructure as code, I really want to be doing that. So you can actually download your function artifact, which includes a SAM template and also your function code, and then plummet straight into your IDE. And the IDE enhancements is actually taking what SAM does under the hood and just making it way simpler. So you can, and this is the SAM CLI rather than the SAM transfer. And so you can do local debug, you can do set breakpoints in your code, just hit F5, set that all up really easily. It's got a whole pane to configure it. You want to build your functions locally, you can do a cache build, a parallel build, use a container to do the builds. You literally just tick these boxes and it's going to save it as configuration, and you just click a single button and it's going to build your functions. You can then use deploy it, 2 deploy options, the sync option, which is just quick and dirty, get it up into the cloud, literally save your function artifact, and within 2-3 seconds it's uploaded in the cloud for that fast iteration. Really good. and of course a full deploy with CloudFormation, and then remote invoke. So within your IDE, you can do remote. We've rejigged all of that workflow, so you can grab test events from the console, you can load your own files, you can grab sample events, all within that. So literally you can do local invoke, debug with breakpoints, stepping through your code. You can do builds, you can do remote invokes, and also look at your logs without leaving your IDE at all. So I think that's a sort of big quality of life. And I know some people love the terminal and they're quite happy to type in all the commands. I know Luke is our terminal aficionado and he's an expert at that. I'm not as clever as Lucas, so yeah, I don't remember all the commands to type. So yeah, this is just the start of it. This is just the start of it. You know, there'll be highlighting some of the stuff, but there's going to be a lot more focus on doing stuff in the IDE as well.
But one thing, Julian, I would add on that is also the possibility to have the CloudWatch logs directly in your IDE. That is a super feature for me that was there for a while, but very often people are not aware that you have the live tail that is coming all the logs without going to the console. That is absolutely amazing. And I found, and maybe it's just me that I wasn't aware of that, but I found a very cool thing on Amazon Q. When you install the plugin, you can even inline start to, let's say, select a bunch of code and inline ask a question on how to manipulate. So I was doing like the demo that I'm preparing for event, where I was adding, let's say, a few contextual data just to try a few things out, and I just like did with natural language. That for me was like a breeze, because that takes care to maintain the structure of my objects and stuff like that. So I think it's something that has to be mentioned as well in development.
And that's in the console as well. I really like that in focus, just where you are, what's it, Command I or Windows Control I or whatever it is, and just type what you want straight over there. There's not having to go to the side panel to, you know, invoke the AI cleverness.
So one thing to throw out too, and this is probably minor compared to those, but something that, you know, when you have a console, and we know we build it, and all of us have probably thousands of Lambda functions in our accounts because we're doing proof of concepts and things like that, and you're wondering what is performing the best, what's throwing the most errors, things like that. So we have a new metric right at the top of the console that's the top 10 Lambda functions, right? And it has your top 10 performing. So what's being invoked the most? It has your top 10 erroring. Hopefully there's none in there, but you know, there are on mine. And then you have your top 10 consecutive or you know, being hit at the same time. I can't think of the word. This happens to get old, you just forget words. But yeah, the consecutive or invocations. And so really cool quick view on how they're performing. You can drill down into them, and so I thought that was kind of cool.
Cool, yeah, I like that. There was one other one.
That's the word. Opera codes. Put it in the text box. None of you helped me, just by the way, and that's noted and being written down. We're going to talk in HR about that. But concurrent is the word I was looking for that just jumped right out of my head. So thank you, Opera codes.
Appreciate it. So also, what do we have? There was something, and I've just missed my space because I've got mad. Oh yeah, we did actually mention it. The live logs tail. Just another couple of Lambda things. I'll just bring it up onto the screen because it's easier to someone's looking at what. Event source mappings, a whole bunch more metrics. So you want to know how quickly things come into the Polar resource and get sent. That's great. If you're security conscious, your own keys for zipper archive functions, that's going to be awesome. Amazon S3 is a failed event destination for asynchronous and stream event sources. That's a massive mouthful, but that basically means it's going to send the whole payload to S3. So that's awesome. Remember how you would get some metadata about the payload, and then you had to go into the original source, be it, you know, Kinesis or Kafka or something, and then pull out the record to do processing? You no longer need to. You will just have the whole record in S3. CloudFormation hooks. To support custom Lambda functions, so you can do much more funky things with CloudFormation. CloudFormation hooks are actually super useful. You can do like before something gets deployed, run a Lambda function to do some checks. So you can do, you know, as part of your CI/CD pipeline, it can just add some cool, useful stuff in there as well. If you're into Java, custom serializer, and also JSON login support for .NET managed runtimes. Does anybody else have anything after my quick whistle stop tour of that, or we cover that quickly? Was that
I do like how you called out if you're security conscious. Then you can use your own SDK. So like, if you go in front of like a room, how many of you are not security conscious? If anybody
good point.
Yeah. Microservices. They're
overrated.
Yeah. Well, so it's only
Eric's already putting that on my. Eric's already putting that on my HR list. He's got two things now.
Yeah. Well, the discussion between Julian and I and our HR rep is very long already. So
I do I do want to emphasize one of the things, Julian, you had on your list, right? Because I'm, obviously security, but I'm also really big on observability. And the fact that we have ESM metrics is really powerful, right? Because think about it, right? When you have those scenarios where you're processing data from Kafka or SQS, right? You have tons of metrics on the event source side, right? SQS, Kafka, we have tons of metrics. We have tons of metrics on the function side, concurrency, duration, latency, all of that, right? So ESM was kind of like this magical black box in the middle that just worked, but you didn't have any visibility into it. Well, now you do, right? Now you have very fine-grained visibility into how many messages were pulled from event source, how many invocations were caused because of that, how many messages were filtered out along the way. This is really powerful capability to kind of see your observability for like message and data processing end to end. So definitely haven't, if you haven't seen the blog, I definitely encourage you to read it.
Big plus one on that. I think I used to encourage folks to use custom CloudWatch metrics for tracking things like the number of messages that were processed, right? You can process in batches, so you know your number of Lambda invokes, but because the batch size can be variable, you wouldn't know exactly how many messages had been processed. These new ESM metrics help to close that gap. And then the filtering on the ESM, if you picture processing messages from a Kinesis data stream, maybe you only need some subset of those. The filter allows you to filter out the ones you don't want before they hit your Lambda invocation. And now you have metrics to show how many were filtered out beforehand. Super cool. Just makes it so that you get much better observability out of the box.
Yeah, less guessing. Definitely. And I am actually refreshing the AWS compute blog and the what's new, because there's something coming out imminently, and I'm going to tell you about it, but that's also going to be cool for this event source mapping world. That's the only guess. Let's try another refresh. No, okay, I'll prod them internally and just make sure we get that sorted, just to help you out.
From what I'm hearing, we've already overwhelmed folks with pre-invent. I'm sorry,
yeah, so we just add some more.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, anybody like step functions? Okay, there we go. Adam, I think you had some step functions things you wanted to talk about. So what's going on in the step functions world?
Yeah, so talk about kind of developer experience, a couple really cool launches in the step functions space. So in the past, if you think about like kind of the input and output of each of your states, it's a JSON payload, and you could manipulate that payload using JSON path and some intrinsic functions, and it worked, but there was a big learning curve, and it just wasn't as user-friendly as it could be. And so we now offer, and the existing way still works, everything, existing step functions continue to work, but you can now use JSONata as what you use to kind of parse and select different attributes from within the JSON. And to be honest, before this launched, I didn't know about JSONata. Went online and started playing with it. There's things online that you can use to play with it. It's really cool, and it's just really intuitive. I find it really easy to pick up, and if I find it easy to pick up, it's going to be easy for other people as well. And then the other thing that we launched, which I also really, really love, is variables. So the ability to say, hey, I got this input payload, and there's certain pieces of this that I know I'm going to want to reference further down in my state machine. Let me assign variables to those certain pieces, and then I can just reference those variables in future states. On top of that, you also get, if you're authoring in the console using Workflow Studio, there's autocomplete that has the names of your variables. It just makes it so much faster. In the past, you would need to basically pass on the big giant input payload that you would get in, and continually reference the same pieces of that JSON if you needed to refer to them over and over again. Now, super simple. You can set a variable and then autofill that variable as you compose that step function in the console in the Workflow Studio. So super big launches there that just make it faster and easier to write step functions workflows.
And Adam, am I right that you can dynamically set that variable within the step functions while you're running the state machine, or is that at configuration time?
No, it's dynamic. Like you can set it while you're running. The one thing that you can't do is you can't reference it within the same state.
Yeah.
So think about the variables when you set them. You are saying at the output of this specific state, this step in the step function, set these variables. And so, you can't have like two variable assignments that like reference another variable that you just assigned. So that's the one kind of limitation to keep in mind, is they're set kind of on the exit of a given state.
Yeah, because I was chatting to a super in-depth step functions expert at one of our go-to conferences, in fact, 2 of them this year. And he had such a great use case that he had a step that was using the SDK integrations to pull something from DynamoDB. And then he wanted the result of that to affect which path in the workflow was going down. And he was just like, and I was like, I can't tell you, but I'm hinting that something may help with that. So like, yeah, to have that dynamic output, you can imagine how dynamic your step functions can be to pull a value from somewhere, and that's going to pick which path you're going to go down. So awesome.
To add to that, right, I keep telling the customers I work with, those are step functions. So there's a step part, but those are just, functions. So treat them as functions. Store the source code in source control, right? Have unit tests, right? Version them, right? So treat them as regular code functions. And now with variables, you can do even further in this regard, right? So how would you do something like that, right? Like SDK call in code. You would say something like, const response equals client.call, right? And then you have that response object. So that's your variable word, constant, right? And now you can do this with step functions. It becomes extremely powerful.
So one of the things, by the way, I just posted 3 videos. One's an overview of both. The other's a little bit more of a deep dive in JSON. The other's a deep dive in variables. But the interesting thing is in the combination, obviously the JSON, you have all these built-in JSON functions, which I think Adam was alluding to or talking about. And then, of course, we created some that replaced the intrinsic variables that we had in JSON path, so you can get randoms, things like that. Well, what's really cool is I was building these videos, I was doing an example, and for example, I had to, one of the things, if you were to loop, like I have a migration step function workflow that I have that updates a huge DynamoDB table, right? It's actually what we do for S12D. So I have to update owners on some of that. So I have to crawl through that. So I have to, first of all, I have to paginate, right? And so it used to be I'd have to paginate, and then I'd have to have these weird state transitions and stuff like that to munge the arrays together and that kind of stuff. But what's really cool is now I just create a variable right up front with the very first response. I save it there. If there's more, I can then with JSON just use the append function and append, keep appending records to that variable. And then when it was all done, I could run, I wanted to create a change set of all the ones that I've done, but I didn't want all the data. I was able to map through that entire array right in a JSON string and just kick out just the data in the records that I needed. And I refer to that in these videos, but it's crazy powerful. And overall, you remember when we had results path and input path and all those other paths? Now it's just arguments and output, and that's it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's super exciting.
Yeah, and the dev guides that cover the transformational aspects of JSON have the simplified map. So like it was really confusing with JSON path to understand what that flow looks like compared to JSON. And in the docs, there's a pretty little picture that shows the difference in the simplification of both. Mm-hmm. And also what Adam was talking about when the variable is written. And so like you can write it at the basically as a part of when the output writes, the assignment of the variable happens at the same time. So that same state can't reference it, but the next state is able to. So I think it's really awesome what you can do. And actually, we have a couple workshops where you can get some hands-on with it. We have API 201, the step functions workshop. We've refactored a couple of the modules to be JSON if you're creating a new state machine, because that's the new default state machine query language, as well as we have a new bonus section that's specifically getting hands-on with building something as JSON path, and then seeing how it can be optimized, building it in JSON with a price checker workload. So it's really interesting there. And then we also have API 203, which is building common orchestrated use cases using AWS step functions. And we've done the same thing where we do have some JSON path as well as some of the modules with JSONata, where we cover how you can wait for external systems using wait for task token. We have some distributed map use cases, so you can do some distributed data processing with there as well. And you can get some hands-on with just using step functions with JSON path and JSONata and kind of see the benefits of the new functionality as well.
I'm going to throw out a shameless plug as well, and in honor of the great Ben Smith, who's with us today. He said hello. So, hey, Ben, it is so good to see you listening. Super glad. But I'm taking a session actually that Ben did last year. We're modifying it and changing it for all the new goodness. But it's a 400 level building advanced workflows in AWS step functions. And of course, it'll include JSONata, it'll include variables and all kinds of other goodness. So, so check that out, API 402, and be glad to see you there.
Cool. So is that a lot of changes in that talk, or is it just JSONata and more one-finger jokes?
Any one-finger jokes is a change from what Ben did. It is JSONata variables, some removal of some patterns that we don't need anymore because we have JSONata and variables. It's really cool. But a lot of the same stuff is still there. So yeah.
Cool. And Alpha
Ben's a big act to follow, so I hope I do it justice.
Alpacode says, will the workshops be available to public or only for reInvent attendees? Anyone?
So I would say it kind of depends. So like some of these, whether they're workshops or builder sessions, some of them are publicly available, but you would have to run the resources in your own account. It depends on the workshop, if the workshop's built that way. But if you do have an account team with AWS, you have AWS accounts, you can talk to your solutions architects, your technical account managers, your AMs, and say, hey, I'd really be interested in running this workshop, or I want to get to know more, and start coordinating that. One thing I will say is specifically around like JSONata and what's been released, we have specific editions that we run for reInvent that may be trimmed down. For example, the step functions workshop, it's like a 4-hour workshop. There's no way we could do that 2-hour block. We customize it, we're making some modifications, and then after reInvent, we kind of roll what we've done, updated, changed, and the new content into the new expanded workshop. Because just a little insight, everyone that creates a workshop does it as kind of a labor of love. We don't have dedicated teams. We have people, like we have our roles as SAs, TAMs, whatever else we may be doing at AWS. We want to build this to help our customers, and so you can get hands-on and learn. And so we do this as an addition to what our role is. So it takes us a little time to get up to date, update those modules, and keep them active. But definitely talk to your account teams and see how they can help.
Yeah. And then AWS goes and changes all the console for the rounded things, and everyone who writes a workshop is like, oh no! Got to update all the screenshots. Ryan McCormack, Ryan Cormack, apologies for butchering your name. Nice to have you with us again. I'd love it if Amazon Q was able to help us move from JSON path to JSONata. I'm sure that would be cool on the roadmap. I will ping someone internally to suggest that if that hasn't happened already. Good idea. Thank you.
So I'm trying to find who it is, but somebody has already written one. Did y'all see that? It's either Lars or is it Lars? Okay, because sometimes Luke can do some of the stuff. So I'm trying to find it. And he said it's not perfect, but it's already there, kind of making this conversion. Oh, there it is. Alpacode just throwing it in there. It is Lars
Jacobson.
So yep. I'm trying to find that link.
I was gonna say the same thing, but Eric always beats me to it.
Well, I'm always talking. I apologize. But you have the hair, so what can we do?
Well, one thing I want to add on the variable side, this was something that I was working through yesterday as I was reading the release blog post. The assign, because as Adam was saying before, it's on the output, still has that 256K limit. The thing to be aware of is that the variables allows you to assign up to 10 meg, but each particular state still has that 256K limit. So be aware that we're building that, and we could certainly find ourselves in situations where we might start scratching our heads because we expect more.
Okay, Cool. And just because things come out super quickly, we were within the past 10 minutes, the provision mode for Kafka event sources. So yeah, this has just come out. There is another Compute blog post which will explain this in way more detail, but this is basically superchargers. If you're using Kafka with Lambda, this allows you to basically pre-provision polars, set a minimum, set a maximum, and off you go. So, you know, it's going to scale up pretty quickly already, but this is if you have a huge Kafka workload and you want to add a new consumer and you want to make sure that your records are ready to process, you know, within a second of them coming, this is for you. So yeah, literally hot off the press. Yeah, small little pricing change for this as well. This is a chargeable thing, but think of it sort of, it isn't, but it's like maybe a bit of provision concurrency, but for Kafka event source mappings. Just we got customers who run huge amounts of things for Kafka. They want to add a new, they want, you know, have a huge dump of data and want to start immediately, and that can help you there as well. Okay, quickly. Yeah, EventBridge, SNS, SQS, just quick kind of things. EventBridge is talking about a 94 improvement in end-to-end latency for event buses. This wasn't in one day, it's over sort of 18 months, but this opens up a huge amount of use cases when you can do back-end processing, interact with the front end. We've got a release, obviously, with AppSync, which we'll talk about, and the whole new AppSync events. But yeah, EventBridge just gets faster. It literally is making event-driven architectures a reality for so many more use cases. So that is kind of cool. And then, oh yeah, just the one at the bottom, you know, that SQS thing, I don't know how scalable that is, but like the in-flight limit for FIFO queues is like 20 to 120K. So, I mean, yeah, they've just 6x'd it, you know, one of those little things behind the scenes from one of our older services, as you do. Yeah, AppSync and Amplify, that's what I wanted to talk about. So yeah, a WebSocket API to so built-in WebSockets with AppSync, really easy to set up, super great. I know there are lots of different ways to run WebSockets on AWS. This is just another abstraction which makes it super simple and just part of AppSync. So yeah, really good. Who knows more about that?
I think the other highlight we need to make on this one is the fact that it's not bounded to GraphQL. So exactly. It's like a bare naked WebSocket like we're used to do in all good fashion. And it's great because it's fully serverless, obviously. And more importantly, you can plug with your library. Bear in mind, you might find some challenge if you're using Socket.io, but if you have like let's say the normal WebSocket libraries on the client side, it will work like a charm.
Cool, awesome. Yeah, thank you, Manuel Ortiz Bay. Oh, there we go. That's a blog post for that as well. Yeah, you can also just go to the AWS. This is the mobile blog. Search for that in your whatever search engine that will take that to you as well. But yeah, this is actually super. It's one of those things like people are like, oh, AppSync is only GraphQL. I don't quite understand. And then people realize, you know, so many websites are using WebSockets, and you know, you want to keep state up to date between various things, chat applications, all this kind of thing. And of course, you could use API Gateway. Of course, you could use IoT Core. Of course, you could use, you know, various WebSocket things, Nate. But handling connection management and pooling and all that kind of stuff is a pain in the nether region. So yeah, this makes that much easier. We do have just a quick one on what else do we have on Amplify? Yeah, a whole AI kit for Amazon Bedrock. So Amplify is just adding more stuff to integrate more kind of things. So yeah, a whole full stack AI stack for Amazon Bedrock. Just connect, building your Gen AI apps. It's going to make it much simpler. Quickly on ECS, application signals is some enhanced monitoring, and also service versioning and deployment history for Amazon ECS services. So yeah, if you're in the ECS world, that is going to be super useful for you. Thank you for bringing up the slide. Then,
so, hang on. I'm going to stop for a sec. Did you see the predictive scaling for ECS? Because that's not in there. Predictive scaling for ECS. That's a huge deal, right? So you have several ways of saying, look, I'm going to do scheduled, or I'm going to, you know, load-based, things like that. But this can actually work with those and do predictive scaling so that you're already up and running on those scales and stuff. So there's a lot there. And what's been really cool is the feedback we're seeing from you know, the socials is this is really cool to start in ECS and wait till it applies to Lambda functions, or wait till it applies to anything else that requires scaling. So. Super cool. Adam, I saw you shaking your head. Do you have something about this one?
I mean, the thing I love about it is that it can be combined with other auto scaling features, right? So I know a lot of folks that have cyclical workloads, maybe, you know, the US, business day, right? You know, your traffic ramps at like 8 a.m., 9 a.m. So you have these scheduled steps in your auto scaling. You don't have to change any of that. That stays the same. And then you apply this on top of that. And then when you have fluctuations in addition to those time fluctuations, it's going to do the predictive auto scaling there. So I just love that it integrates so well with what's already there. Super easy to adopt and should just help people have better performing and better kind of cost following in their apps running on ECS. So yeah, super cool.
Yeah. Oh, hey, there,
hey, Raul. Welcome. Thanks for
Hey
joining
guys,
us.
thanks for adding me, Julian.
Cool. Yeah, just on the last thing, there have been so many announcements. I was like, oh, well, this isn't going to take too much time. And then, oh yes, Aurora Serverless V2 scale to 0. For all the serverless cheerers in the back row who've been in the peanut gallery talking that it doesn't scale to 0, well, now it does. So that is super cool. Yeah, it scales to 0. It's got a sort of capacity unit kind of thing, which just zaps down to 0. It does take 15 to 20 seconds to warm up again when it does need to do something. So yeah, for dev workloads that you don't want to keep paying for when they're not being used, absolutely perfect. And even for production workloads, if it is if you know something is going to be coming up at a particular time, well, 15 to 20 seconds beforehand, do a query and it'll start. I mean, that's also very, very feasible. Oh, and DynamoDB, remember that service? Yeah, they just halved the price for on-demand on-demand throughput. So I hope you don't mind that. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
that is huge. That is absolutely huge. And then, yeah, our good friend Cognito, who people absolutely love because it is very cost effective and is quite powerful. But some people may say, a little bit challenging to use. And so, yeah, Cognito has done a bunch of focus over the past year. A new console, passwordless logon. There was another one I had it written down somewhere. Oh, a new managed logon kind of feature. So, yeah, if you're using Cognito, awesome, good for you.
Julian, I wanted to add something on the DynamoDB price reduction. The price reduction was so huge, or maybe so considerable, that most of the maybe provisioned resources you had on DynamoDB now are better on demand. So that's something we should consider.
Yeah.
On demand is now the default for mostly everything you do it with DynamoDB. In terms of pricing.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. That some people were, picking provision because there was a kind of sweet spot. So take your calculators out or your napkins, and on the back of the napkin redo those calculations because on demand could be cheaper now and just much more flexible. Cloud Wayne, thanks for the question via Twitch. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Does Aurora Serverless V2 scale to 0 if you're using a proxy in Lambda functions? Good question. I
don't think I have the answer on that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anybody?
We'll have to check. Unless someone else has got some quick Google for you, we can work that out. But yeah, does the proxy keep that connection open, and does that equal a query or not? Interesting.
Is that RDS proxy? Because I would think with you could use the data API and you're not using the connection.
There we go. You see, that's why we need Higgy on. He knows all the stuff. So there we go. Cool.
I wanted to mention something about application signal, right? So in addition to ECS, Lambda is also integrated with application signal. Right? So the whole suite of services that can feed data into application signals include pretty much everything: EKS, ECS, Lambda, right? You can have your own custom instrumentation for your applications. Now, on the Lambda side, the instrumentation is literally just a single checkbox, like literally a checkbox in the console or a property in infrastructure as code. Lambda service will handle the rest. It will add the layer. It will do all the configuration. And you're starting to get all the traces of your functions directly into CloudWatch. You will see them both in X-Ray and in application signals. And the fun thing with application signals, now that you're feeding data from various sources like API Gateway, Lambda, ECS, you can start setting SLIs for pretty much every piece of your application, even if your application is not just using Lambda, if it's using multiple different compute types. And you can set the general SLO, let's say, for the API Gateway endpoints, right? So you're monitoring your application from the external perspective, but you can, additionally to that, you can monitor every single component. I was playing around with that over the last few days, and it's beautiful, right? It's literally like a single checkbox thing, right? And in 3 to 4 minutes, you're starting to see data from your function. Latency, availability, you're setting the threshold, you're setting when exactly you want to set alerts, right? It's pretty convenient. It's like application performance monitoring that spawns across multiple compute types, but goes beyond compute as well, for example, with API Gateway. So it's pretty convenient and easy to use. Definitely recommend checking that out.
Anton, I see a blog coming out of that. I know you're not busy right now. This is a down week for you. So if you want to pump out a blog, that'd be a great blog. So
we've got 15 minutes, so yeah.
Well, let's talk about it.
Yeah,
Let's talk about it.
So, Julian, I think you're getting ready to move on to something else. But before we do, I think we missed one, or I missed it. Maybe I was sleeping while you said this. But API Gateway had a pretty big launch.
Oh, yes, I had it. Oh,
API Gateway, that's right. Yeah. API Gateway has custom domain names for private endpoints. And that is huge. This has been an ask forever.
Higgy, you wrote the blog post, didn't you?
Yeah, I was wondering if we were I was wondering if you were just saving the best for last, because
always.
I'm gonna stop talking. Higgy, you go.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's like for any customer who is building REST API endpoints that's within a private VPC. So these are private REST API endpoints.
Right.
For many, many years, our customers have been saying, we want custom domain name support. So we have this vanity stable URL that we could host privately. And we want to do this also across accounts, because many of our customers also have a multi-account strategy where they want to be able to access these APIs across many different accounts. And so this new capability allows you to build out this custom domain name. You can have many different REST APIs behind it, and then expose that to multiple accounts within the organization. And so again, there is a blog post out there where we talk about how to implement that at detail. And again, this is when we announced this across the serverless community, especially the specialist SAs who've been doing this for some time, there was a collective hooray. Like, some people were in disbelief. I even reached out to some former AWS folks, some friends of this show here, where one of them actually commented and said, I never believed this would happen. Congrats that you guys got this.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, that is super cool. Yeah, API Gateway, the best saved for last. Obviously, Higgy. Yeah, that was a cool one. I think I had a missing slide with that on. I definitely did type that in. Yeah, so just quickly switching over to some of the other kind of talks and other things going on. I mean, we actually even have, funny enough, we haven't really got to reInvent. We've just done the pre-event announcements. We've been so busy. So yeah, keynotes are obviously huge. Monday night, Peter DeSantis, he's basically the SVP of utility computing. In English, that means he's the boss of all infrastructure. And I know serverless people think, oh, well, you don't want to talk about infrastructure. But this talk is always incredible, because it shows them amazing things where it's, maybe from chips and Graviton to regions to data centers to all the stuff that runs. And at AWS's global scale, it's like a gazillion-ish things that's going on. So yeah, it's always a super impressive and fun thing with Peter DeSantis. New CEO, we have Matt Garman as our CEO this year. So yeah, that'll be a whole new keynote. Going to be interesting to see what will be different or what will be the same between the keynote. Going to have to wait and see. And then Swami always does the AI and data keynote on a Wednesday, which is also going to be obviously about ML. And I presume there's going to be some Gen AI stuff this year, but I don't know if really he focuses on that. But I bet he would. We'll have to see. If you're a partner, we've got Dr. Ruba Borno, who's going to be talking about all the partner kind of things. And when is that? On the Wednesday as well. And then some slight sort of person who's been involved a bit with Lambda is Werner. And obviously the awesome Werner keynote from 8:30 to 10:30 on the Thursday morning, just when you think you've had enough of reInvent and it's too much and you've deluged by all the data and everything. And Werner comes on stage, and he's always got cool stories and cool, funky things to talk about, and, architecture things. And for me, this is where my developer hat and my developer brain goes on, because it makes me think of the bigger picture. He talked about Frugal Architect last year and asynchronicity the year before. So yeah, that's just a quick whiz through the keynotes. Anyone got anything about keynotes that they want to mention?
You covered it.
No? Cool. We can move on. We also have some innovation talks. Serverless is going to be splattered across a whole bunch of talks. We've got containers, instances, and serverless compute. This is Anthony Liguri. These are VPs. These are distinguished engineers. That's going to be cool. On the right-hand side, Cole McCarthy, who's an absolute guru to do with all things networking and cryptography and everything. Networking and innovation. And in the middle, Adam Seligman, who's our new sort of vice president of developer experience. So yeah, he's going to be talking about the developer of the future. I'm sure there's going to be some Gen AI in there. I'm sure there's going to be some serverless service in there. So yeah, this is a real developer focus at this reInvent, which Adam's a good speaker to listen to about that as well. I think there is also a serverless leadership session. So this isn't highlighted as a keynote or an innovation talk, but it's actually just SVS 211 within the session catalog. But this is Nick Colt, who is, I got them the wrong way around. I got their titles the wrong way around. Usman Khalid is the director of AWS Lambda. Oh dear. Another HR violation. Eric, stick that on the list, please. So we've got Usman Khalid, who's basically the boss of Lambda. We've got Nick Colt, who's the head of product management for all of serverless. So he's going to be talking. And then, Kathleen DeFalk, senior vice president from Capital One. So, I mean, 3 people who literally know exactly what's going on in the world of serverless. And yeah, they're going to be obviously looking back in the past of 10 years of ECS and Lambda. And then obviously into the future of things that are going to be happening. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. That's going to be a cool session as well. There are lots of other kind of sessions.
Know who these people are. We really do. We just we do a lot of typing and labeling and things. So
yeah, some of our bosses, we got their titles wrong. Oh well. And lots of other kind of sessions. Breakout sessions, 60 minutes in a whole big kind of thing. Or who wants to go through and talk about the different kind of session types? I've waffled on for too long.
All right.
Sure.
Breakup sessions are 60-minute sessions. These are usually the biggest sessions as far as the 300-400 people in the rooms. Workshops are more intimate. These are where you're actually hands-on, get your hands dirty, you build and stuff, and actually it could be a lot of people in those rooms as well. Chalk Talks are really cool because these are limited to, I think it's 85 now. It used to be 60, but I think we're up to 85. And that's all that can come in. And this is where you interact, man. When we prepare for these, we literally say, okay, we're going to give you maybe 15 slides and say, hey, here's kind of the context, stuff like that. Now, what are you trying to build? Let's talk through this. And of course, we have some things in our back pockets to kind of talk through. Builder sessions are small, 5-10 people at the table, where you'll sit and you'll build something together. And then finally, code talks are live code right in front of you. These are where Luca shines, Eric does not. So this is how that works. Live code. I can code, but man, with 2 fingers, I'm the worst fat finger on the planet. So watching me code is painful and lots of tears. So there you go.
Cool. Thanks, Eric. And Alpaco's chimes in. Which session types are recorded? Yes, only breakout sessions are recorded. So they'll be on YouTube and they're pretty quick with getting them up. But also remember, if you are at reInvent and all the things are fully booked, I think it's only 80% are pre-booked anyway, so there's always walk-up space. You may need to come a little bit earlier, especially when Eric's talking. I think people are queuing up into the next state. So there is always capacity. I think even later on in the week, some people miss some sessions, so don't miss out for that kind as well. Chalk Talks and all those builder kind of sessions, you get hands-on, interactive kind of things, which would be good as well. There's something else I was going to say for breakout sessions, but I've completely forgotten. So this is time to talk about your sessions. Why don't I pick Joe? Did you have some sessions you were going to talk about? You do. You had a builder session, don't you?
Yeah, I have a builder session it's around step functions. It's building common orchestrated use cases using AWS step functions, where we mentioned this a little earlier, but where we'll go through waiting for external systems pattern. We'll also deal with walk through distributed processing using distributed map, and then we'll also look at building the Saga pattern and how you can do that for some of your critical workloads. Actually, if you don't mind, kind of pivoting along the same line, I'd like to pivot to Raul to talk about our other session.
Oh. Hey, thanks, Joe. Yeah, the one that I would like to talk about is we are quite excited to bring the new version, I would say, because the reason it's a little new is because based on the feedback we received last year, the AWS Step Functions workshop, which has kind of become a de facto workshop to know everything about step functions, as you can imagine, has grown in size over the years, right? So what we have done for the participants this year is, and with some of the features that are going to be launching, we have created a version that they would be able to finish and get the best value out of it within the allotted 90 minutes. So we have for reInvent this year, and we believe strongly that people will enjoy it, the basics about how to get started on step functions, what are those different features that the service provides, and how they can use those for their individual business challenges that they're facing. So anybody who has registered, looking forward to interacting with you guys and talking about step functions. Joe will be with me in that session as well. He's the co-presenter. So yeah, looking forward to talking about everything related to step functions.
Cool, awesome. Over to Adam. You've got some talks. We probably need to do this sort of like 30 seconds each. So how quickly can we talk? Adam, what have you got?
I have, we'll see if I can get the names right. So I have API 309, which is building a meeting summarization solution with, oh, nope, that's the wrong one. Okay, so building event-driven architectures with Kafka and EventBridge. So lots of customers using Kafka and EventBridge together. People are sometimes surprised to hear that, but it's actually a really great combo. Come to this Chalk Talk and we'll talk about why that is and what you can build. It will be really fun. Me and Michael Gash, who's a PM on the EventBridge side, are going to deliver that one. And then I also have API 310, where we're going to build a meeting summarization solution with GenAI, and serverless. This is not like a GenAI hype session. This is like how you really do something with it that's actually useful. This is a code session, so we're going to build the solution live in front of you using a lot of step functions. I'm doing that with Justin Callison, who's the director who manages step functions and EventBridge. So pretty cool to see like this, very senior person in AWS like roll up his sleeves, and he's going to actually use the services he manages right in front of you. So it'll be really fun.
You got a director's title, correct, which is all helpful. Thanks, Adam. Over to Higgy. What do you got, Higgy?
Oh, if I can get the mute button. I've got 3 sessions. 2 of them are breakouts. The first is SVS 318, scaling and securing private workloads with Amazon API Gateway. So we just talked about the custom domain name launch. So we're going to actually go super deep in some patterns. And we have a customer who's actually going to talk about how they're going to be using this custom domain name feature. The next one is SVS 324, implementing security best practices with serverless applications. This one and the next one that I'll talk about, I'm co-presenting with Josh Kahn, our tech lead for serverless. So we're going to just basically talk serverless best practices as it pertains to security. And then the last one is a Chalk Talk SVS 207, effectively model costs for your serverless applications. Again, I work with a lot of customers who maybe they initially say, I've heard the FUD around serverless being expensive at scale. Well, we work through what those design considerations are to help you understand where does cost play as you build and design your application. So hopefully I was in with my 30 seconds.
Cool, awesome. Who do I have up next? Anton.
Okay, I'll be super fast. Yeah, I'll be super fast. So first of all, I got SVS 320, and this is where I'll be showing how to use Terraform for accelerating development and deployment of serverless applications. And I will be joined by Anton Babenko. He's the creator of serverless.tf framework, which has like millions of downloads. I think over hundreds of millions of downloads. Right. I also got 2 other sessions on the same topic, improving throughput of streaming workloads on with serverless applications on AWS. So this one, Julian, that you're showing, this is a Chalk Talk that I'm doing together with Alex, my peer. Right. This is where we actually be building something almost live with the audience. And there's also SVS 217 that was announced yesterday because we've completed all the new launches on Friday. Right. So if you still haven't, booked your place at this session, I think I still have a few seats left. This is where I'll be talking about how to actually improve the throughput, techniques which are common regardless of what event source type you're using, techniques which are specific to Kafka, specific to Kinesis. And I also will be covering new launches like provision folders and ESM metrics.
Cool. Awesome. Luca, over to you.
Yeah, so I have 4 sessions this year, so plus all the repeats. So the first one is on accelerating event-driven architecture using event storming. That is a technique that it will be quite fun, this Chalk Talk, and we are going to run an event storming session with the audience. So if you are there, don't get used to, let's say, just sit. You will interact with us, and we will model basically a specific area of an application. Then the second one is another Chuck talk on event-driven architecture, where we are going to discuss with my spur partner, Matt Mackes, the gotchas that we have learned helping customers in UK and Ireland. And we are going to explain a migration or how to move from a batch solution into EDA. The third one is a code talk where I'm going to share instead the developer experience for serverless workload with Michelle, that is going to take care about the step function part. I will take care about the API part, and we will show the latest and greatest that are coming out from Visual Studio Code, all hands-on, and we will focus more on tools. And the last one, but I think is interesting as well, is a breakout session with Formula One, where we are going to talk about their journey on using micro front ends with ECS and Fargate. And it is fantastic because if you go today in Formula1.com, you will see the results on how speedy is the website.
Awesome, thank you. Eric and I both have talks as well. I've got a best practice talk, a Kafka talk. Eric, what do you have? Eric's on mute, I think. Eric, I think you're on mute, or is that me?
He's on
It's me.
mute.
Okay, ready? I got 5 talks. Here they go. I have an EDA at scale talk. I got a building advanced workflows and step functions talk. I got choosing the right tool for the job. That's with Mr. Julian himself. That's how about compute. I have thinking serverless, and I have building EDA containers or event-driven or event-based containers. Boom. They're all in the catalog.
Boom. Awesome. We're out of time, but have fun at reInvent. There's the sports forum and Caesars forum, a whole bunch of cool stuff, even starting on the Sunday. The Memento Believe in Serverless party, I think we're all going to be there. Sign up for that. Replay is crazy. It's huge. It's enormous. Go for that as well. Lots of stuff going on. And reinventparties.com, the unofficial list of all things for reInvent. Thank you very much for joining us. Apologies for running slightly late. Yeah, utter chaos, but all the pre-invent announcements, awesome. See you next week if you're there.